Right? Let's go back to Green Mile. It's the way you were looking out there. You were taking it in. And I don't know if you, Graham, were acting that or you were just doing that.
The Green Mile is a movie that has stood the test of time, and it's a great film that anyone can watch and enjoy repeatedly. However, even those who have seen the movie countless times might not be aware of some minor details that helped bring the larger production together. The key cast, period setting, and ambitious genre elements required numerous interesting approaches to make The Green Mile the beloved movie it is today. It's not flawless, but as a supremely faithful movie adaptation of a serialized 600-page novel, it has succeeded far more often than it fails. Here are 20 weird facts you may not know about the movie. Body number 20. Duncan used to be a bouncer and bodyguard. Michael Clarke Duncan left behind a list of memorable performances, but many still remember him best for portraying John Coffey in The Green Mile. The role earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. It was Bruce Willis, his co-star in Armageddon, who had recommended him for the part to director Frank Darabont. You may be questioning why he perfectly fit into the role. Well, he has a background as a guard. Duncan grew up in Chicago, raised by a single mother. When she fell ill, he dropped out of college to support her. He dug ditches and worked security at clubs to cover their expenses. He had always wanted to act, and by the time he was in his mid-20s, he was living in Los Angeles, working small jobs while trying to get roles. To support himself, he became a bodyguard to several public figures. He decided to leave that work behind after one of his former clients, the notorious B.I.G., was murdered. That moment pushed him to focus entirely on acting. Before Armageddon, Duncan was often cast in minor roles, such as bodyguards or bouncers, as few roles were written for tall, middle-aged black men with large builds. After The Green Mile, things began to move. The change was not overwhelming, but the film gave him the kind of acting career he had been working toward for years. He was proud to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, even ahead of two of his former clients, Jamie Foxx and Will Smith. He was huge, and his height was intimidating, but what if there was something deceptive behind those looks? Number 19. He wasn't as tall as he looked. Michael Clarke Duncan, who stood 6 feet 5 inches tall, brought a strong and noticeable presence to the role of John Coffey in The Green Mile. Although he was not 7 feet tall, as some imagined the character to be, his height was close to that of David Morse, who stood at 6 feet 4 inches, and James Cromwell, who stood at 6 feet 6 inches. Director Frank Darabont employed meticulous filmmaking techniques to make Duncan appear larger than life. By selecting specific camera angles and positioning, the crew created the effect that Coffey towered over the others. This approach was not loud or exaggerated, but shaped how audiences viewed the character. The production team built smaller properties than usual to make Duncan appear bigger on screen. The bed in Coffey's cell was made with smaller dimensions, making it appear that he could barely fit. The electric chair used in the final scenes was also smaller than usual, giving the impression that Coffey's frame almost swallowed it. These small but intentional decisions helped the audience believe that Coffey was tall and much larger than any man around him. In truth, Duncan's height was slightly above Morse and Cromwell's, but the props and camera work gave the impression of a much larger figure. They created a portrait of a man who stood apart in stature and spirit. Before being cast in The Green Mile, Duncan played more minor roles that did not attract much attention. Taking on the role of John Coffey became the turning point of his acting career. Coffey was the center of a prison story, set in the 1930s, and he had to be played by someone who could show strength and tenderness at the same time. Duncan's quiet and caring performance gained him wide praise. Though his height was impressive, it needed more support to match the grand image of Coffey described in Stephen King's novel. The visual techniques throughout the film helped him rise above even the tallest of his co-stars. Duncan also changed his physical appearance to fit the period of the story better. He was known for having a defined muscular build from his earlier roles, but he eased back on his workouts during filming The Green Mile. This helped soften his look so he would resemble a man from the 1930s who lived a hard life and did not have the sharp body lines of a modern-day actor. All of these choices, the way Duncan carried himself, the props made to fit his character, and the way the film was shot, helped bring John Coffey to life as a man who seemed to fill every room he entered. The story needed someone who could hold the center quietly, without loud words or strong movements. Duncan's natural size, combined with careful production design and direction, helped shape the image of a man whose presence could not be ignored. The gentle way he played the role, supported by the film's visual choices, left a lasting impression. His work in The Green Mile stood out, shaped by his efforts and the thoughtful care of those behind the camera. Number 18. Period inauthenticity. When films are set in the past, the aim is often to convey a sense of the period, rather than to follow each detail with complete accuracy. The Green Mile was first planned to take place in 1932. That date was later moved to 1935 so that a scene could include footage from the movie Top Hat, which had been released that year. This part focuses on the small details that do not match the time shown in the film, even if they initially seem minor. The issue of Weird Tales that Delacroix reads is dated November of the year 1937, but the scene is set in the year 1935. The quartz clock in the room with old Sparky was invented in the year 1927, but it was not used outside laboratories until the 1940s. The bottles of Royal Crown Cola held by the guards were from the 1950s. Bottles with painted labels did not appear until 1936. Before that, bottles had no markings. During the 1930s, Scotch tape was a new product. It stopped working when wet and could not have been used to gag a person. The clock on the desk in E Block is a Westclock's Big Ben Style 5. That model was produced between 1939 and 1949. Music, however, follows a different path from cinema regarding fixed dates. The soundtrack includes the voice of Eddie Howard, who became popular in the 1940s and 1950s. The songs chosen were not recorded until 1940. Another example is Billie Holiday's version of I Cannot Give You Anything But Love, which did not exist until 1936. At the same time, in Louisiana during the 1930s, radio stations were unlikely to play recordings by black performers. Language use in the film also does not always match the period. At one point, Paul Edgecombe refers to a doctor's opinion as gobbledygook. That word did not exist in the year 1935. It was first used in public speech 9 years later by Congressman Maury Maverick in the year 1944. The uniforms worn by the correctional officers in the film also do not reflect what would have been seen at that time. In 1935, guards at American prisons did not wear official uniforms. The production team understood this but chose to use uniforms anyway. Director Frank Darabont believed they added visual weight to the scenes, and Tom Hanks said the outfit gave him a structure that helped him move through the performance. Other items shown in the film also belong to later decades. The straitjackets used in certain scenes have buckles, but back in 1935 such jackets were fastened using laces. The most significant difference from history, however, comes from the method of execution. In Louisiana during the 1930s, the state still used hanging. The electric chair did not come into use there until 1940. Number 17. Tom Hanks' work ethics. Tom Hanks was known among those on the set of The Green Mile as a steady and thoughtful presence. He arranged a meal for the entire cast and crew every Friday evening. One week it might be sushi, the next it could be In-N-Out burgers. No one went hungry, and the gesture became a quiet but lovely routine during filming. When Stephen King visited the set, Hanks remained in character as Paul Edgecombe. King never met Tom Hanks. He met the death row guard. Once, King asked if he could sit in the electric chair, but Hanks said no. As the officer in charge, the chair was his responsibility, and he treated it that way, even off camera. During one intense scene, Doug Hutchison bet the background actors that they could not repeat his dialogue from memory. They did. He did not know that Hanks had placed large cue cards behind him, writing out the lines to help them win the wager. Michael Clark Duncan was nervous before filming the scene where John Coffey heals Edgecombe's infection. The shot required him to hold Hank near the groin. Before the scene began, Duncan discovered that Hanks had placed an empty plastic water bottle in his trousers, allowing Duncan to do the task without unease. During filming, Hanks was invited to leave his handprints outside Grauman's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, an honor that means as much to many Hollywood stars as an award. It's a sign that you've made it. He used his lunch break to run over, place his hands in the cement, and return in time to read lines off camera for Hutchison's shots. Anyone could have done the job, but Hanks believed the work should be done properly. Tom Hanks is undoubtedly one of the best actors of our time. While immensely talented, his work ethic, which is rooted in these principles, has contributed significantly to his success. Number 16. The Green Mile was very personal for Frank Darabont. As Frank Darabont was preparing to begin work on the screenplay, his cat was diagnosed with a tumor. Though time was short, the cat showed no signs of pain. Darabont kept the cat close while he wrote, letting it stay by his desk daily. He often referred to the cat as his co-writer or co-pilot. He later explained that the writing process felt like a mirror to what the film portrayed. As he described, it was like walking that mile beside someone he deeply cared about. While he worked on the script, the cat remained by his side throughout. The screenplay was completed in just 8 weeks. This was considered a fast turnaround, especially for a story taken from such a long and detailed novel. His co-pilot passed away peacefully not long after the writing was finished. Darabont later said that The Green Mile was the most satisfying film of his career. Of the nearly 50 stories by Stephen King that had been adapted for the screen since Carrie in the year 1976, The Green Mile was the only one to pass the $100 million mark at the domestic box office before it did in 2017. The film earned Darabont a nomination for Best Screenplay based on material previously produced or published at the 2000 Academy Awards. He was also nominated for Best Screenplay at the Bram Stoker Awards and Best Script at the 2000 Nebula Awards. His work behind the camera was also noticed. Darabont was nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Cinema at the Directors Guild of America Awards in 2000 and Best Director at the Saturn Awards. The Green Mile became one of 1999's most recognized films. It won the People's Choice Award for Favorite All-Round Motion Picture and Favorite Dramatic Picture. It was also awarded Best Action, Adventure, or Thriller Film at the Saturns. The Academy recognized the film with a nomination for Best Picture at the 2000 Oscars, while the Broadcast Film Critics Association included it among their nominees for Best Film. Number 15. Several mice were used as Mr. Jingles. Even with the strong performances and carefully written characters played by the human cast in The Green Mile, Mr. Jingles quietly draws attention whenever he appears. The small mouse shows up on death row and adds a sense of lightness to a place filled with waiting and sorrow. His presence brings moments of calm and quiet amusement to the men facing the end of their lives. He also plays a part in the larger story, especially where the unusual events begin to unfold. The mouse is not only shown running across the floor, but also across the floor. He performs simple tricks, including balancing on a small wheel, which adds a unique rhythm to the scenes. However, do you know Mr. Jingles was not one mouse? The production did not rely on just one animal. According to the documentary about how the film was made, 15 different mice were cast for the role of Mr. Jingles. Each mouse was trained to perform a specific action. One would be used for running, another for tricks, and so on. This careful planning helped the film stay consistent without putting too much pressure on any animal. The work of these 15 mice helped bring out the gentle moments in the story, showing how even a quiet creature can make an impact within a story filled with pain and silence. Number 14. Doug Hutchinson was much older than his character. When a studio adapts a novel to the screen, it often adjusts certain aspects of the original story to fit the demands of film production. In the case of The Green Mile, one such change involved the character of John Coffey, not Percy. In the novel, Percy is written as a young man of 21. However, the actor chosen to play him, Doug Hutchison, was 39 years old during filming. Before being cast, Hutchison told Frank Darabont that he was in his early 30s. His appearance helped support the claim. His face carried fewer signs of age, which made the difference less noticeable. He had experience in this kind of role and could shape the character in a way that suited the film's tone. The age difference between the character in the book and the actor in the film did not create any issues during the movie's production. The role was demanding, and Hutchison brought intensity and detail to his scenes. His behavior in the film drew clear reactions from those around him, both in the story and during production. The change in age remained only a detail, and his casting served the story's needs as it was told through the lens of the film. Number 13. Sam Rockwell, committed to his character's appearance. Sam Rockwell is known for putting care and effort into his roles. In The Green Mile, he played Wild Bill Wharton. This role became one of his career's early turning points, helping shape his path as a character actor. Before he began to take on leading roles, performances like this gave him industry recognition. His character in the film is depicted as having visible acne, particularly across his body. When the time came to film a nude scene, Rockwell demanded more from the makeup team. He asked that acne and blemishes be applied not only to his face, but across his whole body. This decision stemmed from his desire to remain faithful to how the character had been portrayed throughout the film. He wanted his appearance to match the personality and background of Wild Bill as closely as possible. The result was a physical appearance that helped complete the role. The image created by the makeup team was in line with what had already been built through Rockwell's actions and expressions. His decision to make that request gave the character an added sense of consistency, and the details added by the makeup team stayed true to the film's setting and tone. The scene came together with careful coordination between the actor and the crew. Number 12. Prisons were segregated. At the time, racism is not central to The Green Mile, but appears in certain parts of the story. Wild Bill uses racial slurs when speaking to John Coffey, showing his attitude. Another part of the story involves how quickly people accept that a black man could be responsible for a crime, even when the person who committed it is white. The film moves past some of these details to keep the story moving, but those points remain in the background. The setting of the film is Louisiana during the 1930s. During that time, prisons in the South were not racially integrated. The idea of a black prisoner sharing a block with white prisoners, especially on death row, does not reflect how prisons worked during that period. John Coffey being housed with white inmates does not match what would have happened in real life. The same applies to the Native American character, Arlen Bitterbuck, played by Graham Greene. His presence on the same cell block would not have occurred under the prison system's rules in that time and place. The film includes these characters together to support its story, even though doing so alters how the prison setting would have looked during those years. These decisions are part of how the film handles certain parts of history while focusing on the larger themes within its plot. Number 10. Guards did not carry guns. The Green Mile presents two characters who serve as the primary source of harm within the story. Percy and Wild Bill initially appear to be nothing more than unpleasant men, but their harm becomes clearer as the film progresses. Percy is responsible for Edward's death, not just by following orders, but by deliberately botching the execution. Wild Bill's part in the story is revealed later. He is the one who committed the crime for which John Coffey was sentenced to death, the taking of the lives of two young girls. A central turning point comes after Edward's execution. John Coffey reaches out and takes hold of Percy. Through this, John transfers something into him. Percy then moves in a dazed state toward Wild Bill's cell, pulls out his gun, and shoots him. That moment leads to Percy being taken away to a mental health institution, while Wild Bill dies in the same place where he had spent most of the film mocking and threatening others. The events bring both characters to a close in a way that changes the course of the story. But under real prison rules, what happened would not have been possible. Guards inside a prison block, especially one that holds men on death row, are not allowed to carry firearms. That part of the story adds to the drama, but does not reflect how such a prison would have operated. Number 9. Edward's execution was inaccurate. One of the most painful scenes in the film is the execution of Edouard Delacroix, played by Michael Jeter. Jeter brings a softness to the role, and though the character is on death row, he comes across as simple and unsure of everything around him. There is a part of him that behaves like a child. That adds weight to the scene where his life is taken. His death is the harshest in the story, showing how far Percy is willing to go to cause harm. Percy does not wet the sponge that is supposed to carry the current during the execution. That sponge is needed to make the process quick, but Percy chooses to ignore it, and the result is slow and painful. The scene shows Edward screaming and shaking for an extended period while others watch in horror. This part of the story adds to the emotional weight of the film. But in real executions by electric chair, the muscles lock up, and the person cannot open their mouth to scream. What happens to Edward is more dramatic than what would happen in real life. The changes in the scene enhance the emotional impact, especially since Edward had already been portrayed as gentle. Still, as those familiar explain, the real process would not have looked the same. The body becomes rigid, and any sound becomes almost impossible once the current begins to flow. Number 8. Bruce Willis was key in casting. Duncan, as John Coffey. The casting of John Coffey in The Green Mile was one of the most challenging and pivotal aspects of making the film. The character originated from Stephen King's book and required an actor with a strong build and a gentle nature. John Coffey, a large, quiet black man with a special power to heal, was at the center of the story, which takes place in a prison during the 1930s. He was said to be more than 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a calm demeanor. The team in charge of the film, led by director Frank Darabont, had to find someone who could convey kindness and strength while also meeting the physical requirements of the part. Only a few actors had both the build and the soft nature the role asked for, making the casting process cautious. Bruce Willis, an actor not in the film, helped solve this problem. Willis had worked with Michael Clark Duncan on the 1998 movie Armageddon and again on The Whole Nine Yards, which came out in 2000. Willis had seen Duncan's work through those projects and was familiar with his size and ability. He also knew about The Green Mile and had read the book. He believed Duncan could play John Coffey and decided to step in. He reached out to help Duncan secure the role, which altered the casting process. In the film Walking the Mile, The Making of the Green Mile, Duncan talked about how Willis stepped in for him. Willis told Duncan about the part and promised to call the director, Frank Darabont, and say, "I found John Coffey." Willis was a well-known name in film, so his support meant something. He understood the kind of person Coffey was on the page and thought Duncan could show that on screen. He made the call, which opened the door for Duncan, who had not yet been in a crucial role at that point in his career. After that, Duncan auditioned for the role. In that short time, he demonstrated that he had the build to match what was written in the book, but more importantly, he showed that he could bring out the quiet nature and care that the character required. Darabont saw that and made the decision. Just weeks before filming started, year 1999, Duncan was chosen to play John Coffey. The time was short, but the team believed in his work. His performance made the character real on screen, leading to an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. The casting came together through a mix of timing and belief. Willis's help and Duncan's skill brought the character to life in a way that stayed with many people who saw the film. Number 7. A mistake with Percy's costume was kept in the film. The Green Mile, released in 1999, the costumes played a convincing and essential role in shaping how each character was presented on screen. Although some details did not fully adhere to the style of the 1930s, the outfits helped build the world of the prison and added depth to the people within it. One of the clearest examples of this was the case of Percy Wetmore, played by Doug Hutchison. When Hutchison wore his guard uniform, the shoes he was given produced a high-pitched squeak with nearly every step he took. Initially, this sound was not planned but became integral to the character. Director Frank Darabont noticed how this sound added something unique to Percy. Rather than replacing the shoes, he chose to leave them as they were. The squeak, sharp and constant, lined up with how Percy behaved. Percy was young, with no experience, but acted as though he knew more than everyone else. He did not work well with others, and his manner irritated the more seasoned guards. The squeak of his shoes as he walked the prison halls made his presence impossible to ignore, just like how he acted around his fellow guards. Much of Percy's attitude came from the family ties he carried with him. Being related to the governor's wife gave him a sense of power he had not earned. He ensured that others were aware of this connection, and he used it to shield himself from the consequences of his actions. His behavior often crossed the line, showing little care for those around him. Compared with guards like Paul Edgecombe and Brutus Howell, Percy had no clear sense of duty or fairness. The squeaky shoes added a sound to go with this image. They gave a rhythm to his pride, as every loud step matched his desire to be noticed. Darabont's decision to keep the squeaky shoes showed how carefully he shaped each part of the story. While the uniforms and props were designed to match the period, in Percy's case, they also helped express his nature. The sharp squeak of the shoes hinted at the tension Percy carried with him. Without any extra words, the sound alone told others that trouble might follow. The shoes became more than just part of a costume. They helped shape the viewer's feelings about Percy, scene after scene. Through the use of costume, and especially Percy's shoes, the film demonstrated how small details can help build a character. Doug Hutchison utilized this detail effectively, allowing it to blend seamlessly into his performance. The shoes supported what was already there, Percy's arrogance and need to be seen. Though it began as an accident, the squeak added something the story needed. It became a reminder of Percy's presence, which could be heard even before he came into view. In The Green Mile, the costumes did more than show the period. It gave a voice to the parts of the story that were not always spoken, shaping how Percy was seen and remembered. Number 6. Michael Clarke. Duncan remembered his saddest time for the role. How does it feel to remember a father walking away from his child and family, never to return? The emotions from such experiences are often overwhelming, but Michael Clarke Duncan took advantage of them. He had to portray a deeply emotional character in his role as John Coffey. He gave the part such weight and depth that he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. To evoke the desired emotion, Clarke drew on a memory from his childhood. He thought about the day his father left and never returned. That memory helped him reach the level of sadness the role demanded. It was a painful place to return to, but it helped him bring truth to his performance as Coffey. Number 5. Rodney Barnes snuck on set to land his role. Though Michael Clarke Duncan was larger than usual, the crew still managed to find a stand-in for him in the role of Coffey. The man they chose was Rodney Barnes. Barnes hid inside the paddy wagon used to transport inmates to the prison set to retrieve the part. He was not part of the production at that point. The sudden appearance took aback director Frank Darabont, but after hearing what Barnes had done, he offered him the role. Barnes had one reason for sneaking onto the set. He wanted to meet the author Stephen King, whose work he admired deeply. Number 4. The Green Mile is Dabbs Greer's last film. Dabbs Greer played the older Paul Edgecombe in the film The Green Mile. The role was first considered for Tom Hanks, but the makeup tests did not make him look old enough. Greer, known for his work in Little House on the Prairie, faced health problems before the filming began. Director Frank Darabont changed the shooting schedule to suit Greer's condition. Greer agreed to take on the role and carefully performed as the aged correctional officer, remembering his past. This marked his final film appearance. He was 82 years old at the time. Greer died on April 28, 2007, at Huntington Hospital in Pasadena, California. The cause was kidney failure and heart disease. His death came about 7 years and 4 months after the release of The Green Mile, which came out on December 10, 1999. Greer was born on April 2, 1917, in Fairview, Missouri. He was 90 years old when he passed away. His career spans over 60 years, encompassing nearly 100 film roles and 600 television appearances. He was often cast as an ordinary man, a preacher, or a merchant. In The Green Mile, his quiet delivery of Paul Edgecombe's memories added weight to the story. Greer's body was buried at Peace Valley Cemetery in Anderson, Missouri. His long career is remembered through his roles, with The Green Mile marking the culmination of a lifetime of steady and familiar work. Number 3. John Coffey's ending scene foreshadows his demise. One of the most emotional moments in The Green Mile came when the boss sat with Coffey during their last hours together before the execution. Coffey told Boss he would rather go to heaven than stay one more day on Earth. After speaking those words, Coffey was given his final request. He asked to watch a film, and the choice was Top Hat. As he sat quietly watching it, a glow from the projector formed a soft ring of light above his head, making the scene feel heavier. That moment carried the weight of what was about to happen. The Green Mile became one of the most emotional films of that year. It was nominated for 4 Oscars. It did not win an Academy Award but received many other awards. Among them were 6 Saturn Awards and 2 People's Choice Awards. The performances closely followed Stephen King's idea of the characters. The filming had no clear errors, and the script was carefully delivered. Every detail appeared to be handled with attention from beginning to end. Number 2. The Green Mile shares several cast and crew members with The Shawshank Redemption. The Green Mile shares several cast and crew members with The Shawshank Redemption, which was also directed by Frank Darabont and released in 1994. Both films were based on stories written by Stephen King and set in prisons. Among those who worked on both productions were actors Jeffrey DeMunn, William Sadler, Mac Miles, and Brian Libby. Behind the scenes, composer Thomas Newman provided the music for each of the films. Richard Francis Bruce handled the editing, and Michael Searton was responsible for set decoration. They returned to work on The Green Mile, continuing their earlier collaboration with Darabont. Number 1. Spike Lee was a vocal critic of the John Coffey character. Spike Lee, known for speaking openly about how African American men and women are shown in Hollywood films, raised concerns about The Green Mile. He focused his criticism on the character of John Coffey. Lee and several film critics believed that Michael Clarke Duncan's role followed the pattern known as the Magic Negro. This term describes a black character with supernatural abilities who exists mainly to help white characters grow or find peace. In their view, Coffey's powers and purpose in the story improved the lives of the white men around him, rather than reflecting his full and independent identity. The Green Mile has undoubtedly left its mark on contemporary cinema. Which of the facts surprised you? Let's hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe and turn on your notifications for more amazing behind-the-scenes movie content from us.